Two Jefferson nickels that might be sitting in your change jar right now, potentially worth thousands of dollars. While everyone's hunting Mercury dimes and walking Liberty halves, these unassuming 5-cent pieces from 1967 and 1971 have been quietly selling for jaw-dropping prices that would make even seasoned collectors do a double take. I've been collecting for over 30 years, and I'm still amazed at how these modern coins can hide in plain sight. So before you cash in that jar of nickels, you might want to stick around. Let's start with the 1967 Jefferson nickel, a coin that seems ordinary at first glance but hides extraordinary value for those who know what to look for. The year 1967 sits right in the middle of what many consider a mundane period in American coinage. The silver era had ended, collectors were focused on older issues, and these copper-nickel 5-cent pieces were being minted by the hundreds of millions. The Philadelphia Mint struck over 107 million of these coins without a mint mark, while San Francisco was busy producing special mint sets. It was business as usual, or so it seemed. What makes certain 1967 nickels so valuable isn't their mintage numbers or some dramatic historical event, it's in the details of their production. During this period, the United States Mint was under pressure to produce massive quantities of coins to address a nationwide coin shortage. This pressure sometimes led to quality control oversights that created rarities we treasure today. The most valuable 1967 Jefferson nickels exhibit what numismatists call full steps, a designation that refers to the complete, uninterrupted steps leading to Monticello on the reverse side of the coin. Most Jefferson nickels from this era show worn or incomplete steps due to die wear, strike weakness, or circulation damage. To qualify as full steps or FS, a Jefferson nickel must display at least 5 complete, uninterrupted steps on Monticello. This detail is so rare on 1967 nickels that when they appear, collectors are willing to pay astronomical premiums. To put this in perspective, a typical circulated 1967 Jefferson nickel is worth just its face value of 5 cents. Even in uncirculated condition, most 1967 nickels might fetch between $1 and $2. But a 1967 nickel with full steps in MS-66 condition? We're talking upwards of $3,000. And if you're fortunate enough to find one in MS-67 full steps, a nearly perfect specimen, you're looking at a coin that has sold for over $12,000 at auction. In fact, the current record for a 1967 Jefferson nickel stands at an astounding $15,000 for an MS-67 plus full steps example sold in 2019. When examining your 1967 nickels, you'll need a good magnifying glass and proper lighting. Look carefully at the steps of Monticello on the reverse. The design should show clear, distinct horizontal lines representing the steps leading up to Jefferson's home. Most 1967 nickels will show mushy, indistinct steps, but if yours displays sharp, clear, separated lines, you might have something special. There's an interesting story behind why these full steps nickels are so rare from this period. The Mint was using the same Jefferson nickel design that had been in production since 1938, and by 1967, many of the dies were being used beyond their optimal lifespan. Additionally, to meet high production demands, coins were often struck at higher speeds and with less pressure, resulting in details that didn't fully transfer to the coins. The steps on Monticello are located in the center of the reverse design, the area that typically receives the weakest strike during the minting process. Beyond the full steps variety, there are other valuable errors to watch for in 1967 nickels. Some coins exhibit double die errors, where certain elements of the design appear doubled due to misalignment during the die-making process. Others may show off-center strikes, where the design isn't properly centered on the planchet. Perhaps most valuable are the rare SMS or special mint set specimens from 1967, which have a distinctive satin finish and sharper strikes than regular business strikes. These special coins, when found with full steps, can command even higher premiums. I'll never forget a collector who came into my shop about 5 years ago with a jar of old nickels he'd inherited from his father. He was ready to cash them in at face value until I spotted a particularly sharp-looking 1967 among them. After examination under proper magnification, it turned out to be an MS-66 full steps example that eventually sold at auction for over $4,000. Imagine his surprise, a 5-cent coin worth nearly 1,000 times its face value, rescued from being dumped into a coin-counting machine at the grocery store. The condition of your 1967 nickel dramatically impacts its value, perhaps more so than with many other modern coins. The difference between grades can mean thousands of dollars. A 1967 nickel in MS-65, gem uncirculated, might be worth $20 to $30 without full steps, but the same grade with full steps jumps to $1,000 plus. Move up just one grade to MS-66 with full steps, and you're looking at $3,000 plus. This exponential value increase makes these coins particularly exciting for collectors and investors alike. What makes hunting for these valuable 1967 nickels particularly intriguing is that they're still occasionally found in circulation. Unlike rare gold coins or early silver dollars that have long since been removed from circulation, these modern rarities can potentially be found in pocket change, bank rolls, or inherited collections. This accessibility gives every collector, regardless of budget, the chance to make a remarkable discovery. The 1967 Jefferson nickel also represents an important transition period in American coinage. Just 3 years earlier, silver had been removed from dimes and quarters, and the following years would see significant design changes across denominations. These 1967 nickels, with their traditional design but modern composition, bridged the classic era of American coinage with the modern period we know today. For authentication purposes, it's worth noting that genuine 1967 full steps nickels will have certain diagnostics that experienced numismatists and grading services look for. The strike quality should be exceptional overall, not just on the steps. The coin should have proper luster characteristic of the period, and the metal flow patterns should be consistent with authentic mint products. Because of their high value, counterfeit full steps nickels have appeared on the market, making professional certification particularly important for high-grade examples. If you think you found a valuable 1967 full steps nickel, I strongly recommend having it authenticated and graded by a reputable third-party grading service like PCGS or NGC. These professional services will encapsulate the coin in a protective holder and assign it an official grade, significantly increasing its marketability and ensuring its authenticity for potential buyers. In terms of investment potential, these 1967 full steps nickels have shown remarkable strength even during market downturns. When many modern coins were declining in value during the 2008 recession, for example, high-grade full steps Jefferson nickels from this period continued to appreciate, demonstrating their resilience as collectibles. Their relative rarity compared to other modern issues and the strong demand from Jefferson nickel specialists have created a stable market for these coins. I've spoken with several mint employees from that era who've shared fascinating insights about production practices in 1967. According to these sources, the Philadelphia Mint was running at near capacity that year, with dies often being used until they were completely worn out. This production environment created the perfect conditions for these rarities to emerge, making each full steps example a testament to the occasional quality control oversights that have delighted collectors for generations. Now let's turn our attention to another seemingly ordinary 5-cent piece that packs an extraordinary punch, the 1971 Jefferson nickel. At first glance, this coin might not seem particularly special. The U.S. Mint produced over 316 million of these nickels at the Philadelphia facility and another 106 million at the Denver Mint. These massive production numbers would normally suggest a common coin with little premium value, but as we've learned time and again in numismatics, sometimes it's the overlooked coins that hold the greatest surprises. The 1971 nickel continued the long-standing Jefferson design that had been in use since 1938, featuring the profile of our third president on the obverse and his home, Monticello, on the reverse. By 1971, this design was familiar to every American, having been in pockets and cash registers for over 3 decades. The coin's composition remained the standard copper-nickel alloy, 75% copper, 25% nickel, that had been used since 1946. What separates extraordinary 1971 nickels from ordinary ones parallels what we discussed with the 1967, the presence of full steps on Monticello. But the 1971 issue takes this rarity to another level entirely. Full steps examples from this year are so scarce that they've achieved legendary status among Jefferson nickel specialists. The steps on Monticello for this year's production were particularly poorly struck, making well-defined specimens extremely elusive. To understand why these steps are so poorly defined on 1971 nickels, we need to look at what was happening at the U.S. Mint during this period. The early 1970s saw the Mint focusing heavily on producing the new Eisenhower dollar, which demanded significant resources and attention. Many numismatists believe this shift in focus resulted in less attention to quality control for other denominations, including the nickel. Additionally, by 1971, many of the dies used for Jefferson nickels were being produced with less relief than in previous decades, resulting in less distinct steps even on newly struck coins. The market values for 1971 full steps nickels reflect their extreme rarity. While a typical uncirculated 1971 nickel might be worth $1 to $2, a certified MS-65 full steps example easily commands $1,000 or more. At the MS-66 full steps grade, prices jump dramatically to $5,000 plus. The highest graded specimens, those rare MS-67 full steps examples, have sold for jaw-dropping sums exceeding $15,000. In a 2018 Heritage auction, a particularly exceptional MS-67 Plus full steps 1971 D nickel realized an astonishing $19,200, nearly 4,000 times its face value. What makes this particularly fascinating is considering the journey such a coin must take to remain in pristine condition with full steps intact. From the moment of striking, when the die had to be in perfect condition and the strike pressure just right, through decades of potential circulation, storage, handling, and environmental exposure, the odds are stacked heavily against any 1971 nickel surviving with perfect steps. Each MS-67 full steps example represents not just a numismatic treasure but a near miraculous combination of perfect production and preservation circumstances. I've spent countless hours examining 1971 nickels, and I can tell you firsthand that finding one with truly full steps is like finding a needle in a haystack. Out of thousands examined, perhaps only a handful will show even partial steps, and true full steps examples are exceedingly rare. This scarcity makes the hunt all the more thrilling. Imagine finding a coin worth thousands of dollars in a roll from your bank or in an old collection gathering dust in an attic. There's a compelling story about a 1971 full steps nickel that made headlines in the numismatic community a few years back. A collector in Ohio had purchased a standard uncirculated roll of 1,971 nickels back in the 1970s for just a few dollars, tucked it away, and forgotten about it. Decades later, when Jefferson nickel collecting gained popularity and the full steps premium became widely recognized, he decided to have the roll examined. Remarkably, one coin in that original roll turned out to be a superb MS-67 full steps example that ultimately sold for over $12,000. Stories like this keep collectors scrutinizing modern coins that others might overlook. When examining your 1971 nickels, pay particularly close attention to the Denver Mint examples, denoted by a small D mint mark on the obverse. Interestingly, while both Philadelphia and Denver issues are rare with full steps, some specialists believe the Denver mintage has yielded slightly more high-grade specimens. This could be due to differences in die preparation, striking pressure, or quality control between the two facilities. Beyond the full steps varieties, there are other valuable errors and varieties to watch for in 1971 nickels. Some coins show dramatic double dies, particularly visible in the lettering and date. Others exhibit off-center strikes, clipped planchets, or even wrong planchet errors, where a nickel design is struck on a cent planchet or other denomination. While these dramatic errors are fascinating and valuable, they don't typically command the extreme premiums that the perfect full steps examples do. The challenge of finding high-grade 1971 full steps nickels has led to some interesting developments in the collector market. Some specialists focus exclusively on Jefferson nickels from this difficult period, building date sets of the scarcest full steps issues. Others have turned to original mint sets from 1971, carefully examining those specimens which sometimes received better strikes than regular business strikes. The competition for the finest known examples has driven prices to levels that would have seemed unimaginable for modern nickels just a few decades ago. Condition is absolutely crucial when evaluating 1971 nickels, perhaps even more so than with the 1967 issues. The difference between a standard MS-65 1971 nickel, worth perhaps $10 to $20, and an MS-65 full steps example, worth $1,000 plus, is entirely in those tiny architectural details on the reverse. Even more dramatic is the jump between grades. An MS-66 full steps might bring $5,000, while an MS-67 example could fetch triple that amount. These exponential increases make the 1971 full steps nickel one of the most condition-sensitive modern U.S. coins. For authentication purposes, genuine 1971 full steps nickels will display certain characteristics that experts and grading services look for. The strike should be sharp throughout the design, not just on the steps. The coin should exhibit proper luster for the period, and the surfaces should be free of significant marks or flaws. Because counterfeiting of these valuable modern issues has occurred, professional certification is strongly recommended for any 1971 nickel that appears to have full steps. I've had collectors ask me why they should care about such seemingly minor details as steps on a building, and my answer is always the same: these tiny details represent the perfect intersection of artistry, technology, history, and rarity. The steps on Monticello aren't just architectural features, they're a window into the quality of production at the mint during a specific period, a testament to the preservation of a coin over decades, and ultimately, a key factor in determining numismatic value. Before you go running to check your change, remember that patience and education are your best tools in numismatics. Take the time to learn the diagnostics of full steps nickels, invest in proper magnification, and when you think you've found something special, consider professional certification. The hunt is part of the joy of collecting, and even if you don't find a 5-figure nickel tomorrow, the knowledge you gain along the way is valuable in itself. Until next time, keep checking that change, and happy collecting.